Imagine a man born into slavery in 18th century Virginia, a mulatto son of a slave woman and an Irish overseer.
Now imagine that same man becoming a powerful war chief in the Rocky Mountains, trading furs and fighting battles, before pioneering a key route used by gold seekers to reach California.
This is the story of James Beckwourth. Thank you for watching African Elements. In case we haven't met, I'm the digital avatar of Professor Darius. While he's busy in the classroom, I've stepped in to bring the material to you. So let's jump in.
Beckwourth's life, documented in his controversial 1856 autobiography, spanned nearly 60 years of continuous action on the frontier. He moved seamlessly between African American, Indigenous, and white American worlds, making a fortune through commerce and conflict. But navigating these racial frontiers was a dangerous game, requiring constant reinvention and strategic allegiance.
How did a man defined as black by society manage to claim power and opportunity in a West determined to deny them? Beckwourth rejected the fixed life of early America, seeking adventure in the lucrative fur trade.
Born in Fredericksburg, Virginia in 1798, Beckwourth moved to St. Louis, Missouri as a child around 1810. After disliking his apprenticeship as a blacksmith, he made the definitive move west, joining the Rocky Mountain Fur Company in 1824. He quickly proved his reliability. In 1825, he was among the chosen few considered trustworthy enough to carry $75,000 worth of pelts back to St. Louis for General Ashley. His motivation was driven by self-interest, which he termed pelf, a desire for wealth accumulation and the unbound opportunity the West offered for a biracial man to redefine himself outside the rigid constraints of Southern society. His greatest reinvention was becoming a war chief and adopted member of the Crow Nation. Around 1825 to 1826, Beckwourth was captured and subsequently adopted by a band of River Crow Indians. He lived among them as a warrior and trader for 13 years. This profound transformation was cemented by a white trapper who falsely claimed Beckwourth was a stolen Crow infant returning home. Beckwourth's memoir relays this deception without refuting its authenticity, noting that the white man's word held more weight than his own. By becoming Indian, Beckwourth effectively undid his blackness, leveraging an identity category that offered greater social mobility and opportunities than being a black man in antebellum America. Amongst the Crow, he was known by the name Medicine Calf. Beckwourth navigated the racial frontier through multiple marriages, reflecting his mobility across African American, Hispanic, and Indigenous societies. His life trajectory is visibly marked by his 4 marriages, which spanned different communities in the West. While living among the Crow, Absaroka Indians, he took 2 Native American wives. After leaving the Crow, he later married Luisa Sandoval, described simply as a Spanish girl in Santa Fe in 1840.
Finally, late in his life, he married Elizabeth Ledbetter, an African-American woman in Denver in 1860, at the age of 62. Elizabeth Ledbetter was the daughter of a black woman who was the first laundress in Denver, marking Beckwourth's return to the African-American community where he engaged in the merchandising business.
This story didn't come from nowhere. It came from a lineage of resilience that history often tries to erase. For centuries, the black family structure has been labeled broken, but the reality is it is the ultimate story of survival against systemic oppression. In my new book, Legacy of Survival, The Dynamics of the Black Family, we dismantle the lies and explore the truth about how we survived, from the Middle Passage to Jim Crow, and what we must do next. It's time to reclaim our narrative. Click the link in the description to pick up your copy of Legacy of Survival today, available in paperback and ebook on Amazon and the Google Play bookstore.
Beckwourth ruthlessly combined his identity as a warrior and a trader to amass wealth.
His autobiography proudly recounts using his status and influence among the Crow for personal economic gain, stating he traded beaver and horses at his own price. Beyond the fur trade, he hired himself out as a scout for U.S. troops against the Seminoles in Florida in 1836–37. He later admitted to encouraging the Crow to focus on trapping for the fur company he worked for.
Beckwourth also participated in military actions during the Mexican-American War, joining U.S. Army campaigns against Mexico in New Mexico in 1847. His stated chief interest in all these endeavors was pelf.
For a marginalized man, survival and wealth accumulation required consistently leveraging his skills and alliances, often in service of opposing factions.
Despite his fame, Beckwourth gained wealth in the West, at times through illicit activities, including organized horse stealing in Mexican California.
Beckwourth's biography includes accounts of his association with Peg-Leg Smith and Ute and Shawnee Indians in stealing large herds of horses in Southern California between 1838 and 1840. He was part of a gang of horse thieves who plundered ranches between Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo in 1839. Horse stealing was often considered the worst crime one could commit on the frontier, but when committed against Mexican citizens in California, little effort was made to capture and punish the perpetrators. He also involved himself in Mexican political conflicts, joining rebel forces against Governor Manuel Michel Torrena in the Battle of Cahuenga Pass in 1845.
Beckwourth physically carved his name into the geography of the West. After U.S. acquisition, Beckwourth entered California as a gold seeker. While there, he discovered the wagon train route through the Sierra Nevada mountains that still bears his name, Beckwourth Pass. He established a town there, founding a hotel and trading post that supplied emigrants flowing into California. This pass remains an important historical spot and is used today by the Western Pacific Railroad. His ability to locate this obscure pass and capitalize on the massive migration marks him as an instrumental figure bridging the old fur trade era and the American expansionist movement.
Beckwourth's controversial 1856 autobiography was a text of narrative mobility that affirmed his American identity. His dictated memoir, The Life and Adventures of James P. Beckwourth, 1856, is recognized as a hybrid autobiographical genre, blending elements of the Indian captivity narrative with the Western borderlands autobiography. By reworking the conventions of the captivity narrative, for example, framing his adoption by the Crow as a captivity-cum-adoption procedure, Beckwourth gained agency and narrative mobility. The text was written at a time when Black authors often had to present themselves as religious seekers, as adventurers, as fledgling capitalists, to claim authority in white-dominated society. Beckwourth successfully used the genre to establish himself as an expert on Plains Indian cultures and a loyal American, despite controversy over the accuracy of his tales. His complex life ended in deep moral contradiction, highlighted by his involvement with the Sand Creek Massacre and his policy advice against Native peoples. In November 1864, Beckwourth was hired as a guide for the 3rd Regiment of Colorado Volunteer Cavalry under Colonel J. M. Chivington, just before the notorious Sand Creek Massacre. Beckwourth later testified that the murder and mutilation of hundreds of Cheyenne and Arapaho civilians revolted him and was unnecessary. Yet his autobiography contains shocking passages advising the U.S. government on how to subjugate native tribes through starvation by systematically destroying the buffalo to clear the land of them. Beckwourth's story is a profound example of how marginalized individuals seeking success and survival were sometimes forced into participating in the destruction of others, leaving a legacy defined by profound ethical compromise. Beckwourth's ultimate insight lies in this painful duality. He achieved status and mobility that few black men of his era could imagine, but his success was often predicated on adopting the imperial ideology that enabled the dispossession of native peoples. His ability to survive hinged on adapting his morals to the highly varied and violent contexts he faced. He found freedom in contradiction, becoming whatever identity offered the most viable path to prosperity and influence. He prioritized hows, survival profit, over oughts, moral fidelity. The story of James Beckwourth shows how African people were never passive in history. They shaped empires, ideas, and resistance. But But Beckwourth's relentless pursuit of self-interest meant that this formerly enslaved man died a free, wealthy, but deeply compromised figure. He was an extraordinary survivor, navigating the treacherous waters of the western frontier by becoming a reflection of whoever offered the best path to freedom and profit.
If you found this remarkable, hit the like button. It helps the Discovery algorithm find people who need to hear this story. Once again, I'd like to send a huge shout out to the history makers in our Patreon community. You can join them for as little as $1 a month and gain early access to ad-free videos by clicking the link below. And if you want to know about another deleted piece of history that explains why our world looks the way it does, click this video right here. I'm Professor Darius. Thank you for watching African Elements.